All right, going to talk a little bit about work attitudes, something we all have, right? We all have a little bit of attitude occasionally. Although here in a organizational setting or in a work setting, we specifically define what these work attitudes are. And so that's what you see in the first bullet point here. So an attitude consists of a bunch of things, right? Cognitions and feelings about aspects of our environment that then in turn will influence behaviors. Okay, so let's break it down a little bit. You see that I bolded and underlined the C and the A and the B, the cognitions, the affect, and the behaviors. I do this to remember that attitude can be remembered as CAB. Cognitions, affect, behaviors turn into a cab that drives away, right? So, cognitions, that's our thinking. We think and evaluate our environment that we're in. And we also have feelings about it. We have affect about the things that we encounter within our environment. And our thoughts and our feelings then in turn influence how we behave, they influence our actions. So, that is what an attitude is here at work. So, think about it, right? So, I have a job. I have a job and I get paid a salary. And I think about it and I know that my salary is okay, but at the end of the day, I feel, it could be a little bit higher. I would like my salary to be a tiny bit higher. I feel there's a little bit of unfairness going on or whatnot. That's my cognition, right? I'm evaluating the salary that I have from work. And now that I think about it and I feel that my salary is not that great, it makes me feel a little depressed, a little sad, a little unhappy, right? Those are the feelings that come from me thinking about work. And then now that I thought about it, I'm not super happy with it. I'm just going to call in sick today. I don't feel like coming in. It's been a long week and yeah, they don't pay me that well anyway. So now I'm calling in sick and the company has to deal with absenteeism or tardiness if I decide to come in after half the day, right? So we care about attitudes in companies because it influences people's behaviors. So we can see that behaviors are communicated constantly in organizations. So you have a choice if you want to be seen as a high performer within your organization, somebody that is high potential, somebody that gets the cool projects, that has the opportunity to jump in on a different shift or whatnot. So you can also choose to communicate through your behaviors, your attitude. So you can show up and actually appear more positive than you are or appear more happier than you are. So your attitude is almost always communicated through your language, through your behaviors, and you can make a choice to actually show a better attitude and a better behavior then is truly reflecting your attitude, right? And we also know from research that pretending to be happy or acting happy, even if we don't feel the true feelings of happiness, will make you happier. So going in with an attitude of happiness will actually make you happier in the longer term. So a couple of important questions to ask yourself here on this slide. What does your attitude communicate to those around you? And what is the relationship between your attitudes and your behaviors? So think about it, right? Behaviors and attitudes are everything in an organization at the individual level, right? That's what it is. So in our circles here on the right side, we have organizational commitment and we have job satisfaction. These are our two big work attitudes that we look at. So organizational commitment is really the emotional attachment that people have towards their employer. So this is towards the big organization, towards their employer, not their job, not their supervisor, not their coworkers. It's the organization, it's the company that is actually their employer. And job satisfaction, on the other hand, is the feelings that we have towards our job, right? So the job that we do, the day-to-day job that you do, that's job satisfaction. All right, so we got those two going on. So job satisfaction and organizational commitment. Job satisfaction is probably the most important work attitude if you look at how much it's measured and evaluated in companies across the country. So we call it sometimes engagement, sometimes satisfaction. Gallup does a big poll every year where they poll, across industries, across organizations. And we know that a majority of people are not very happy at their jobs. A majority of people are actually pretty dissatisfied. So the question is then, what are the things that impact job satisfaction and organizational commitment, right? What are the things that makes us even more committed and more happy, or less committed and less happy? So that's what you see here with the personality, a person, environment fit, job characteristics, psychological contract, organizational justice. Justice and fairness keeps coming back, super important. We have work relationships, and we have stress. So all of these things then will influence, increase or decrease your level of job satisfaction and your level of organizational commitment. So that's what we're saying just over here on this right side here. People do pay attention to all of these factors of the environment, how they're treated, relationships, stress level, but also, right here in the second bullet point, it also depends on what the economy looks like on the outside, right? What is the job market? If you have a tight job market, you have a hard time finding a job, even if these things over here are not ideal, we might still stick with the company and be committed to the company, right? And also personality, we've talked about it before, it keeps coming back. It's something that's very stable within you. Your values tend to be pretty stable, and those things also impact how you feel about your job, right? If you tend to be more neurotic, if you tend to be less agreeable, maybe you're also less likely to be happy and be not as committed to your organization. So let's break down these factors into 6. Personality, we're not going to cover here, but we're covering the other ones that we talked about right here. So personality, we talk about in different places, but we'll talk about the other 6 ones right now. All right. So factors of job satisfaction and commitment. The first one is person-environment fit. And we have 2 things going on here. We have person-job fit, and we also have person-organization fit. Okay, so a person-job fit is when your or the person's KSAOs, which is knowledge, skills, and abilities, right? Let's see if I can find a pen here. Your knowledge, skills, and abilities. Knowledge, skills, and abilities. O stands for other characteristics. So when your knowledge, skills, abilities, and other characteristics, such as, a PhD or certification or driver's license, other things that you need for the job, they match the demands of the job. So you have a fit, right? You are well cut out to do the job. Then we also have a person-organization fit. When the values, the more soft things, your values, your goals, your aspirations, your personality match the culture, the values, the goal of the organization. And this is important for growth within the organization. You're not going to stay in your job forever. You're going to climb the ladder. So we want to make sure that you fit the organization too, right? So better fit means higher levels of satisfaction, greater levels of commitment. Job characteristics, we talk generally about when we talk about motivation. So we're going to find this in our motivation chapter. And I'm writing here with my keypad. I don't even have a pen here for this computer. So motivation is typically what we talk about when we talk about job characteristics. So for this, know that the ability to use a lot of different skills, right? So being able to do a lot of different things using different skills at work tends to be better, right? So we're happier when we get to do that. When we are empowered, we feel free to make decisions and take on things that we want to take on. We get feedback, because when we get feedback, we can improve. And when we get to perform significant tasks, meaning it has some importance, somebody actually cares about the job that we do, right? So these are all things that are inherent to the job itself. And the more we have of these job characteristics, the happier we tend to be and the more committed we are. Organizational fairness or justice. So we tend to use the term fairness or justice interchangeably, right? Tend to talk about them as the same thing. So if I say justice or fairness, I mean the same thing. So when we look at organizational fairness and justice, we look at things such as company policies, procedures. Is my supervisor fair, kind, nice, respectful towards me? Do I get fair pay? Do I get fair rewards, benefits, other things that come from the organization, right? Do I perceive fairness? Is the company fair? Is my supervisor fair? So 3 different types of justice or fairness. We have procedural justice, number 1. We have distributive justice, number 2. And then we have something that we call interactional justice, number 3. So procedural justice, or PJ, is fairness in the way that policies and processes are carried out. And I see I have a little thing there that needs to come out. Okay, so fairness in the way that policies and processes are carried out. So are we having fair procedures? Then the second one is distributive justice, is fairness in the allocation of resources or compensation and benefits, meaning the stuff I get. So procedural justice is how we actually allocate stuff to people, and distributive justice is what do I get? Is the salary fair? Are my benefits fair? Are my rewards fair, right? And then we have interactional justice, which is the people around us. How do they treat us? In the interactions with people, how do they treat us? So are they treating us with dignity and respect? Are they treating us in a way that makes us feel good? That is interactional justice. Okay? Last 3 factors of that influence satisfaction and commitment are work relationships, the psychological contract, and stress. Stress. Okay, so work relationships, obviously, if the people around you are not pleasant to be around, you're not going to be as happy and you're not going to want to go to work, right? So it's pretty obvious. So 2 very strong predictor of happiness at work are just that. It's going to be the relationship we have with our coworkers and our managers. Lots of research shows that we don't leave work for the salary. We don't leave work necessarily for the tasks we do, the projects we get. We leave it if we have a really bad boss. Think about it, because you see that boss all the time. You interact with that boss all the time. And also coworkers, even though they don't have as much influence and power over you, they still can make your life miserable. Or on the positive side, they can make your life really great. You might want to go to work because you have such fun time with the people you work with. You love your manager, you have the best relationship, you get to do cool projects, and you get a lot of autonomy, right? So be that coworker, be that manager who other people want to be around, right? Okay. So our psychological contract, a little bit different from an employment contract. The employment contract, that's what you sign. Those are the things that you will do in exchange for the salary or wages from the organization. That's your employment contract. The psychological contract, these are some unwritten ideas or rules. So we define this as the unspoken, informal understanding, what you will contribute to the organization and what they will give you in return. So these are not things that are written down. They're not in any contract, but rather these are the things that we implicitly, indirectly, we just know we should do, and then we expect things in return. So for instance, the organization, the company might actually look at what you bring. What kind of an attitude? Are you willing? Are you a go-getter? Are you proactive? Right? Those are things that are not necessarily in your job description, but we want you to go over and beyond. We want you to be excited. We want you to go the extra mile and take on the challenges that you see without being, needing a lot of assistance and whatnot. And then if you do that, you might get the next work opportunity, right? The next cool project. So that is the psychological contract. All right, jumping down to my last box here, which deals with stress. Stress, something we're all severely aware of, probably, right? So stressors is what we call the things that actually cause us to feel stressed. So stressors are the things that are causing us to have an internal sensation of feeling stressed. So these stressors can be almost anything, seriously. So in the workplace, they tend to be things in the environment, right? So there's a lot of noise or heat, or it's too cold, or ventilation is bad, or it's really dark and you can't see, and it's just not a positive work environment, right? You work in the factory, you work in a field, environmental stressors. We might have interpersonal stressors, right? These are, again, the people up here that we just talked about. So we might have those coworkers that we don't like hanging out with. There might be a lot of politics. There might be a lot of gossiping, right? Those things cause us to feel stress. And we also have, obviously, organizational stressors. So these are the things that come with the job, that come with your career, right? You don't want to look stupid. You don't want to make mistakes. You don't know if you're going to make that deadline. You don't know if the job's going to be there tomorrow, right? These are organizational stressors. So 3 types of stressors your book talks about here: environmental, interpersonal, and organizational. And then also we have a couple more things. We have role ambiguity and role conflict. So role ambiguity is when we don't really know what's expected from us. So that's uncertainty about what our responsibilities are. And surprisingly, a lot of organizations don't really keep their job descriptions up to date. We don't really exactly know what we're supposed to be doing. Managers think we know exactly what that is, but we don't, right? A lot of studies show that it's pretty unclear exactly what we're supposed to do at work. Then we also have role conflict when we have contradictory demands. So you might actually have a boss that asks you to do A, B, and C, and then you have another boss that says, don't do B and C, but instead do X and Y, right? So we might actually have conflicting instructions or asks of us at work, or we might not have time to do it. You might be asked to do A, B, and C and X, Y, and Z, and you only have 10 hours to do it, and really all of that together would take 23 hours. So we have contradictory demands at work, or we can also have conflict between life roles, right? So we have to drop off at daycare, we have to make it to work, we have to go home, we have to cook food, right? We just don't have enough time in the day for all the roles we have. So we have conflict between those. Obviously, that causes stress. And then some stressors, of course, make us happy, right? So even though stress generally is thought of as bad, sometimes it's a positive thing. You get more responsibility. You have a big project that's due. You're giving a presentation to your boss with the possibility of getting a promotion, right? That causes stress, but it's positive. We feel those butterflies in our bellies and we go run. And that gives us an opportunity to perform. And those things are also positive, right? So stress can be negative, stress can be positive. All right, so this is going to be the last slide for this little recording. So we talked about work attitudes. We talked about cognition, affect, and behavior. That's what attitudes are. Our 2 big attitudes are job satisfaction, happiness with our job, and also organizational commitment, the extent to which we are committed to our organization. And then we talked about all these factors, these 6 factors plus personality that actually influence our level of satisfaction and commitment. And now this last slide deals with how do we measure it, right? How do you actually measure or assess satisfaction and commitment? So we can use either surveys or we can use let's see if I can get a different color here on my pen. I might not be able to do that. Oh, there, pen color. Look at that. How nice. Let's pick green, right? So we can do surveys or we can do interviews. So surveys tend to be done pretty regularly. So we do them every year or so. It's an engagement survey. It goes out to all employees. they call it climate survey or whatever they call it within your organization. And you do a lot of ratings on 1 through 5 or 1 through 7 Likert type scales. And these are great. You can see what employees are happy or unhappy about, and then you can fix it. So if you don't fix the problems that are brought out in the survey, people are going to lose patience and they are going to become cynical. So you want to make sure you address everything that the surveys actually bring up, or you'll be in kind of big trouble, right? They should be confidential, right? You shouldn't have people's names. It is an issue if you have a unit with like 2 employees, so you might not want to, you might not want to signify or have people denote what unit they come from if you can then track people down. Because if you can track people down, they're not going to want to be honest with their answers. And then, of course, if you actually like your managers or your top managers, if they are seen as credible and they're going to do something with this information, you're more than willing and happy to do the survey, to fill it out and provide the information. But if you don't really have that trust level there, you don't believe that you can trust and you don't look up to or respect your managers, much less so. And then we have something called exit interviews. And these really just take place when you leave the organization, right? So when you're choosing to leave the organization for another opportunity. So what happens then is typically HR will meet with the employee who's leaving, right? It's typically not the manager, but it's typically HR that should be meeting with the employee. And you should have questions that asks about why the employee is leaving, why they're choosing to go to a different organization or a competitor. And if you get information over time, you can start seeing some patterns, right? Why are people leaving us? What is wrong? How can we fix it? So exit interviews can be very useful. They need to be done confidentially. We should make sure that the employee feels comfortable leaving the information, because as an employee, as leaving the organization, I don't want to burn my bridges. And really here in a place like Sacramento, where it's a pretty small marketplace, we don't want to speak ill. We don't want to gossip, right, about other people or other companies, because it will get back to them. It's really very small place here. So we want to make sure that we don't burn our bridges, that we actually keep those relationships with everybody, right? So assessing attitudes in the workplace, we do it through surveys or we do it through interviews. And that's going to wrap it for this little bit. So thanks, guys.